नमस्ते प्रिय मित्राणि, गतसप्ताहे वयम् उपसर्गाणां पुनः सन्धीनां किञ्चित् परिचयं कृतवन्तः। तत्र स्वरसन्धेः किञ्चित् अधिकगभीरतया अध्ययनम् अपि कृतवन्तः। अस्मिन् सप्ताहे वयं व्यञ्जनसन्धि पुनः विसर्गसन्धीनां रूपाणि द्रक्ष्यामः। And so namaste dear friends, and in our previous week we looked at the upasargas as well as an introduction to the sandhis along with the swara sandhis. In this particular week, we are going to be focusing on the Vyanjana Sandhi as well as the Visarga Sandhi. And I'd just like to mention to you that the Visarga Sandhi is the big chunk of the Sandhi Patha. So, we are going to be teaching you some of the general types of Sandhis that are there. There are several sutras, there are several rules that we will not be able to address at the same time in this particular lecture series, for the simple reason that sometimes the single kind of Sandhi can at times take a whole year in courses in the universities. So, what we are going to be doing here is looking at module 4, which is a revision of the Sandhis, and lecture 10 will focus on the revision of the Vyanjana Sandhi along with the sutras, and we will do some practice. As I mentioned that there are so many of them, so we are going to be doing part 1 in today's session. So, here we are going to be focusing on the Maheshwara Sutrani once more. Just put that in the beginning, because you will understand how it is important to become familiar with the different sutras of the Maheshwara Sutrani and learn how to make the acronyms in the Maheshwara Sutrani itself. And then we will do a revision of the Sandhis, the types of Sandhis, the definition of the Vyanjana Sandhi, which is going to be the point of our focus. Vyanjana Sandhi Bheda, so we are going to look at the different types of Vyanjana Sandhis. There are about 13 of them, and when we are talking of Vyanjana Sandhis, I will introduce you to some of the important sutras with examples and some practice. Anantaram vayam tatra sambhashanam karishyama piyushena sa, so a conversation for building vocabulary and the application of points learnt. And moving on, we will look at some verses defining Indriya Sanyamaha, which is control of senses, the next important value and practice that is part of the general definition of Dharma. To close, we look at one of Swami Shivananda's quotes on Indriya Sanyamaha. So, here's the Maheshwara Sutrani, and I just would like to draw your attention to one small error that we had made in our previous lectures. There was an omission of these two letters, so the th and the t were missing. So, you've got kha, pha, cha, tha, th. I had said it correctly, but I had missed writing it out there, and cha, ta, tav. Astu. So, kripaya, we'll make the correction on our previous slides, but please make sure that you're learning it correctly as given in this particular slide. And of course, it becomes, you'll see why we come back to this ach and hal and hush and khar. You'll get to apply them in today's lesson. So, what's the definition of a sandhi? The kaha sandhi iti. So, varnanam atishayitah sannidhi sandhi. So, they've come so close that they merge and have certain interactions with each other. The sounds of the last sound of the previous word and the first sound of the first word come together and create the sandhi form. So, sandhe phala chatushtayam kim kim asti phalam tatra prathama asti adeshaha yadi plus api yadyapi tatra ikarasya yakarena yakarasya adeshaha bhavati. There is the yakara replaces the ikara, and that's why it's a bit shatruvat. In agamaha, you have a new letter that gets added in. So, patan asti, patan remains, and nakara, another na gets added, and that's mitravat. Then you have lopaha, ubhau api, au drops and it becomes ubha api, and then prakriti bhavaha, which means that it retains its original form. Alright. Now, you've got the sandhi bhedaha or the types of sandhihi. So, we've looked at the swara sandhihi. Today, we are going to be focusing on the Vyanjana sandhi, and then you have the Visarga sandhi. So, the Vyanjana sandhi is also known as the hal sandhihi, just like the swara is known as the ach sandhi. Astu. Tari Vyanjana athava hal sandhi kaha Vyanjanasya sthane adeshadayah Vyanjana hal sandhi bhavati. So, Vyanjana sandhi bhedaha. So there are about 13 of them, as we've mentioned. So atra kim kim asti? Chutva sandhi. So it's a good idea for you to say them along with me. Alright, and there's just one note of caution that not caution, but I just like to reassure you that as we go ahead, there might be some things that look quite complicated, because we're going to be doing the sutras. The sutras are not so easy to grasp always, and in order to become very familiar with them, you have to have a certain bent for, or an inclination for grammatic rules, etc. So if that is not there, just be happy to understand what happens when these sounds combine. So there is a feeling component to it, and then there is the whole cognitive component to it. So you can suit your nature to see how you want to go about these sandhis. Tari atra asti. So repeat after me. Shchutva sandhihi, shtutva sandhihi, jashtva sandhihi, chartva sandhihi, anunasika sandhihi, anuswara sandhihi, parasavarna sandhihi, ngamudagama sandhihi, purva savarna sandhihi, chatva sandhihi, nakarantanunasika sandhihi, sam upasarganantara sandhihi. So I want to tell you that these two sandhis are names that I have coined up based on the definitions that I have, and I'd also like to mention that we've been following the Sandhi Pustaka of Mahabaleshwara Bhattaji, who's written it for Samskrita Bharati. So if there's any doubt and all, then this is the book that you would need to consult to have greater clarifications. Tari anantaram antimam asti tugagama sandhihi. Astu. So this time we are going to be focusing primarily on the first 6 in this particular lecture. Vyanjana sandhi with sutrani and abhyasaha. There is Shchutva sandhihi. Shchutva sandhi kim asti nama? Sutram. So you've got the stosh chuna shchuhu. Etad asti ashtamadhyayah chaturthapadha chatvarinchattama sutram. What does that mean? That's very cryptic. Kim asti tasya arthaha? Sakara tavargayoho shakara cha vargabhyam yoge shakara cha vargau staha. There's a little bit of familiarity with the kind of meta language that Panini uses. But then if you're familiar with the grammar, if you're already comfortable with the word forms that we looked at in our previous weeks, you would be able to make sense of what is being said here. Astu tari shchuhu ityukte kim. What does shchuhu mean? So it is the letter sh plus chu vargaha. So what does chu imply? The cha vargaha, which is cha cha ja jha nya. And as you can see here, what are they saying? That sakarata varga yoho. So sakarata varga yoho, shakara cha vargabhyam. So shakara cha vargabhyam yoge, shakara cha vargau staha. So you see, that is what it implies. Udaharanam ekam pashyama. Manas chanchalam kim bhavati. So you've got the sakara like that, and tatra chakara asti like here. What does it become? It becomes a shakara. Manas chanchalam. Astu. So you would already be familiar with this in your readings of various texts, but idanim you understand the rule that underlies this particular formulation. Next kim asti? Sat plus chit equals takara. So takara plus chakara kim bhavishyati? Sat chit. Chakara tatra bhavishyati. Astu sat chit iti. Anyatra, in another case, atra bhavati cha vargaha plus ta vargaha will give you cha vargaha again. Yatha yaj, which is of cha vargaha, plus naha, which is there, becomes yajnyaha. Astu. Next, punascha, you've got another kind of a sutram tatra, which is shat, and this is the 44th one. Astu, tatra 40th asti, 44th one. So Panini typically he'll give you a sutra which is a generalization, and then give you another sutra which is like an exception case, or it will be an additional information on the general formulation that he has given you. Astu. Tari atra kim bhavati? Shat parasya ta vargasya chutvam na. Tari shat. So after shakara ta vargasya. So if you've got a naha, then you will not get a chutvam. So there is no other letter that will come in. It will remain as such, which is prashnaha. Prash plus naha, prashnaha. Idanim kinchit abhyasam kurma. Tari Shutva Sandhe Abhyasa. Now it's up to you to try and figure it out. So I hope you've got a pen and paper with you, or The best thing that I would say is yada vadanti uchchahi uktva vadantu. Tari uktva try and teach your body the logic of this language or the logic of the sandhis as well. Tari atra asti what we've seen. So we've got sat chid rupam kim bhavishyati uttamam. Kim bhavati tatra? Satchid Rupam. Spashtam? Next kim bhavati? Gunin. So Nakara plus Jayaha, which is the Cha Varga. So it will get the same row. Okay. So Gunin Jaya will become Gunin Jaya. Spashtam? Next kim asti? Brihat Chhatram. Kim bhavishyati? Uttamam. Brihat. Cha, ta will become a cha and Chhatram. Big umbrella. Brihat Chhatram. Astu. Next kim asti? Tapas. Tapas plus Charya. Tari sakarasya cha varganantaram shakara bhavati. Ataha tapash charya. Spashta? Next. Next is something that you would have encountered in a lot of literature. Tat cha. Kim bhavishyati? Tacha. Uttamam. Next. Kiyat chiram. Kiyat chiram. So if you say it very fast, kiyat chiram, kiyat chiram, kiyat chiram, you will see that it will come to the answer that you have here, which is Kiyat double cha and Kiyat chiram. Astu. Spashtam asti? Agre gacchama. Agami sandhi asti shtutva sandhi. Tatra sutram kim asti? Shtuna shtuhu. And etad asti the navachattvarinshattama sutram. So kim vadati atra? Stoho shtuna yoge shtuhu syat. This is almost like some Chinese or some other language, no? But this is all signifying. Huh? So the stoho, shtuhu, they are all signifiers rather than having independent meaning in themselves. Kim vadati atra? Shtuhu ityukte kim? Sh plus tu. Tu ityukte ta vargaha. Ta, tha, da, dha, na. Astu. Tari sa plus sh. Tatra sa plus sh or ta vargaha. Tatra sh bhavati. Ta vargaha plus sh or ta vargaha. Kintu atra there is an apavada there where it's saying that by this rule, which is toho shi, which is the 43rd sutra, it says ta vargasya shakare pare nashtutvam. So it's an exception to the rule that he's just made. And he says like Bhagavan Shashtaha will not change. It will remain Bhagavan Shashtaha. Okay, that's the exception there. And otherwise it will become the ta vargaha. Tari atra pashyama dhanus tankaraha. Kim bhavishyati? Dhanush tankaraha. Uttamam. Brihat. Satta vargaha. Tika. Kim bhavishyati? Brihat tika. Tika is a commentary. So this is Brihat tika. Uttamam. Moving on, in another case, anyatra kim bhavati tatra? Shakara pare ta vargaha athava sa vargasya ta varga bhavati and ta vargasya sakare pare tatra tatra anyah niyama bhavati. So what is the rule it's saying? That na padanta toranam. And this is the 42nd one. So you see atra is the 49th one and this is before that. Just like in this one also, this was a rule that was before the shtuna shtuhu was in place. So here you've got padanta ta vargat parasyanamaha stoho shtur na syat. So what are the words after which without which it remains unchanged? So you've got nam, navati, nagarin, vihaya, stoho na shtutvam. Okay, so it says shat plus santaha equals shat santaha samanam eva tishtati. Astu. And tadupari atra ish plus taha becomes ishtaha, like ishta devata. So it comes from ish plus the suffix taha. Astu. Agre gachama. Abhyasam kurma atra shtutva sandhi abhyasaha. Kim bhavati? Tat damaruhu. Kim bhavati? Tat damaruhu. Uttamam. Tat damaruhu उत्तडमरुः। अस्तु, नेक्स्ट् किमस्ति? उत् प्लस् टङ्कनं किं भविष्यति? उत्टङ्कनम्। उत्तम। उट्टङ्कनम् is typing. That's why uttankikah, uttankika, uttankakah and uttankika means the typist. Astu. Next, pakshin tittibhah becomes pakshin and then pakshin tittibhah. Okay, pakshin tittibhah. आगामी किमस्ति? कतमस्तकार तर्हि सकार अनन्तरं ट भवति चेत् श भवति, अतः कतमष्टकारः। नेक्स्ट्, सत् टिप्पणी किं भविष्यति? सत्तकारस्य ट वर्ग भवति, सो इट् बिकम्स् सत् टिप्पणी। Okay, so you could even do that per like that, huh? Sat tippani. Next kimasti? Ut plus dayana kim bhavishyati? Uddayanam. Ut plus dayanam, uddayanam. Uttamam. Agre gachhama. So the next sandhi that we have is the jashtva sandhi. Now the sutram is झलां जशोन्ते and एतदस्ति अष्टमाध्याय द्वितीयपाद तत्र नवत्रिंशत्तम सूत्रं किं वदति तत्र पदान्ते झलां जशः स्युः more sound effects झल् किमस्ति वर्गीयव्यञ्जन तत्र so the वर्गीयव्यञ्जन from k to m तत्र ञम् so without taking that into consideration which are the fifth letters and which is the anunasikaha. Okay, and what is jash? Jash is j, b, g, d, dash. So j, b, g, d, d, which implies the third letters of your Vargiya Vyanjanas. And I'd also like you to look at the Maheshwara Sutrani once more, if you want to just get that clear. So you've got here jhal. So you see we've got jhal. All the letters except for the you don't have the fifth letters as well as the antasthaha. Okay, so this is one way of going back, and jash we have already seen. Udaharanam kim asti? So what is it saying? It says Vargiya Vyanjana nantaram swaraha yadi bhavati, or if it is a mridu vyanjanam. So the mridu vyanjanas are, as we will see here, the mridu vyanjanams are the hush. What are the hush here? So we see it is the h plus the sh. So the hush, and the hush here imply all your the third, fourth and fifth letters, including the antasthas. Astu, so those are the hush letters and they are known as the mridu vyanjanani. Tari kim bhavati atra? Jash bhavishyati. Tari vak plus ishaha vagishaha. Etad nama bhavantaha jananti avashyam. So I am sure you have heard of this name Vak Isha, the lord of speech. Astu, next dik gajaha kim bhavishyati? Dik gajaha. Atra, in another context, you've got Vargiya Vyanjana, which tends to become the Jash in several instances. So like Vak, you will also hear it as Vag in certain contexts. The Shakara tends to become the Dakara, like Shash plus Bhyam, Shad Bhyam. Astu? Tari, atra kinchit abhyasam kurma militva. Ach plus antaha kim asti? Ach plus antaha, vadantu? Ajantah. Uttamam. Ajantah. Mahat plus yasha, mahat yasha, mahad yasha, mahad yashaha. So you really should try and go by your oral experience of the combination of the two sounds. Okay, so mahad yashaha. Astu. Next, vak plus devata kim bhavishyati? Vak devata, vag devata, vag devata. Uttamam. Vag devata. Next, ut gama, utkama, udgama, udgama, udgamaha. Udgamaha. You can also write it like the g like that, but this is just a case. Just like here, you can do the dya like that also. Okay, that's just to show the combination as a yuktakshara, as a joint letter there. Next, tat plus yatha, tad yatha, uttamam. So I'll try and do the tad yatha here. Next, sat guna sadgunaha, uttamam. You see, you'll get a feel for it. If you keep doing it, uccah yada vadanti kramashah tasya anubhavah api agachati. You get a feel for the sandhi that is there. The rule is a secondary aspect, but at least you will know what works. And especially when you're reading it, you will know how to do a sandhi vichheda, which is what will allow you to make sense of the text. Atra swargat api vadatu, and atra likhami swargadapi. Does it ring any bell? Atra eka bahu prasiddhah shlokah asti yada ramah ravanam hatva saha punarapi ayodhyam agantum ichhati tada lakshmana tam vadati he bhratah kimartham bhavan ayodhyam gacchati. Atra swarnamayi lanka asti kimartham bhavan etat sarvam aishwaryam tyaktva punarapi ayodhyam pratigamishati. Tada Shri Ramah etam shlokam avadat iti prachalitaha अस्ति. सः वदति अपि स्वर्णमयी लंका न मे लक्ष्मण रोचते जननी जन्मभूमिश्च स्वर्गादपि गरीयसी. तर्हि अहं सस्वरं कथयितुं प्रयतिष्ये. अपि स्वर्णमयी लंका न मे लक्ष्मण रोचते जननी जन्मभूमिश्च Swargadapi gariyasi. Api swarnamayi lanka. Even if it's a golden lanka, name Lakshmana rochate. I don't fancy that. Kimartham? Janani, the mother, Janma bhumishcha, and the motherland. Swargadapi gariyasi. Even if someone offers you heaven, there's nothing that can compare with these two. Many of these ideas have played a very foundational role in shaping the psyche of our people here. In today's context, with a lot of influences, a lot of necessities, the circumstances are changing significantly. But some of these values are quite eternal because of the nourishment. I think it brings in the sense of gratitude that one needs to have towards the mother, someone whom we can never repay our debt because of the pains with which she bore us and ensured that we are complete, we are the way we are. Ataha tadrisha कृतज्ञता भावः सर्वदा अस्मासु भवेत् इति आशा अस्ति एका. पुनः जन्मभूमिं प्रति अपि तथा आवश्यकम् अस्ति. तर्हि जगद्गुरु किं भविष्यति? आम्, जगद्गुरुः. अस्तु, तर्हि जगद्गुरुः भारतविषये वदामः एकस्मिन् काले वयं विश्वस्य जगद्गुरुः आस्म. So we were once upon a time the Jagat Guru of the world. Because of the knowledge, everybody flocked to this land. Asmakam eva prayatnena punarapi tatha kadachit syat. And this is not for any competition, but because of the wealth that this land has to offer to the rest of the world, and also learn from the rest of the world. Evam nasyat kevalam vayam dasyamaha. Sarvatah api jnanam prapsyama asmakam vidyamana jnanam api sarvatra prasarayishyamaha. Iti prayatnaha asmakam bhavatu iti eka आशा वर्तते मम. अग्रे गच्छामः. अत्र चर्त्वसन्धिः. चर्त्वसन्धौ किम् अस्ति? सूत्रम् अस्ति खरि च. तत्र एतद् अष्टम अध्यायः चतुर्थपादे चतुर्थपादस्य पञ्चपञ्चाशत्तम सूत्रम् अस्ति. तर्हि खरि परे झलां चरः स्युः. किम् अस्ति तस्य अर्थः? ञ म ङ ण नान् वर्जयित्वा वर्गीयव्यञ्जनानां कर्कषव्यञ्जने खरि परे तत् वर्गीय प्रथम व्यंजनम आदेशो भवति. So what is a khar? Khar is the karkasha vyanjana. So karkasha vyanjana kim asti? So we've seen mridu vyanjana were the third, fourth, fifth letters. Karkasha are the first, second, and shashasa. Jhal kim asti? Vargiya vyanjanas minus the fifth letters as well as the antasthaha. Tari char kim asti? Ka cha ta ta pa plus shashasa. Atra kim bhavati? So we see Vargiya Vyanjana plus the Karkasha Vyanjana will give you the first letter. Prathama Vyanjanam Adesho Bhavati. Tari atra dig तृतीय अस्ति पालः. So it says the third letter will become the first letter. तर्हि किं भवति? दिक्पालः. पुनः अनुष्टुप् छन्दः किं भविष्यति? अनुष्टुप् छन्दः. And this is a chanda in which a lot of the verses that we are looking at belong to this particular chandah. पुनः ते वदन्ति दिग् शान्तिः अस्ति चेत् तत्र दिक् शान्तिः भवति. मिलित्वा किञ्चित् अभ्यासं कुर्मः. तर्हि वर्गीयव्यञ्जन प्लस् कर्कषव्यञ्जनं प्रथम व्यञ्जनानि भवन्ति. अस्तु. तर्हि विराड् पुरुषः किं भविष्यति? वदन्तु. विराट् पुरुषः. उत्तमम्. नेक्स्ट् अस्मद् पुत्रः किं भवति? अस्मत् पुत्रः. उत्तमम्. नेक्स्ट् तादृग् कर्मः किं भविष्यति? उत्तमम्. I can see that you're all getting a hang of it. Tadrik. So this is it's a deceptive one there. Tadrik karma. Just when you're writing, make sure that it is a drik. Okay, it's a dr and it's not a t and a t. Tatra bhedaha asti kinchit. Astu. Tari etad asti na tu etat. Okay. Punaha vipad pratikaraha. Vipad pratikara. Vipat pratikaraha. Uttamam. Vipat pratikaraha. Anantaram sampad kumarah kim bhavishyati? Uttamam. Sampat kumarah. Sampat kumarah. What is the next one? Shad khadyani kim bhavishyati? Uttamam. Shat khadyani. Anantaram kim asti? Etad parshvam kim bhavati? Etat parshvam. This side. Astu. Etat parshvam. Astu. Shad khadyani, 6 kinds of foods, and then etat parshvam, you've got the on this side iti. Astu. Shad khadyani, you must be familiar with in Ayurveda, the different kinds of foods that are there, those that can be sucked, those that can be chewed upon, etc. Astu. So there are 6 kinds of foods in that category. Agre gachama. Let's look at the next sandhi, which is anunasika sandhi. Tatra sutram asti yaro nunasike nunasiko va, and etad asti panchachatvarinshttama sutram. Tatra yarah padantasyanunasike pare anunasiko va syat. Anunasikah tatra asti nga, nya, na, na, ma, which are the last 5th letters of the vargiya vyanjanani. Tari vargiya vyanjanani plus anunasikah, anunasika eva bhavati tatra vikalpena, kintu pratyayānunasikah, when you have a pratyaya which is anunasika, tatra nityam karaniyam eva asti. Yatha udaharanam vag moolam vang moolam. Etad asmakam vikalpa or an option asti. Vag moolam. Astu. Tatra bhavitum arhati. Next asti asmakam chit mayah. Mayam, sorry, chint mayam. Mayam tatra is a full of. Okay, so chit mayam, one that is full of consciousness. Kim bhavishyati tatra? Chin mayam iti rupam bhavishyati. Kinchit abhyasam kurma militva. Tari tad matram kim bhavishyati? Uttamam. Tan matram. You have to go to the last letter or the 5th letter of that particular group. Astu. Tari tatra vak niyamah kim bhavishyati? Uttamam. Vang. The 5th letter and then niyamah. Vang niyamah, the rules of speech. Next, tad mangalam kim bhavishyati? Tan mangalam. Tan mangalam. Next kim bhavati tatra? Mat nivasah, from my house. Mat nivasah kim bhavati? Uttamam. Man nivasah. Astu. Jagatnathah sarve api jananti. Uttamam. जगन्नाथः जगन्नाथस्य आशीर्वादेन अस्माकं सर्वमपि सम्यक् भविष्यति इति प्रार्थना अस्ति सर्वदा। नेक्स्ट् षड्मुखः कस्य अस्ति षड्मुखः किं नाम तत्र षण्मुखः जानन्ति इट्स् अनदर् नेम् आफ् सुब्रह्मण्यं कार्तिकेयः षण्मुखः इति। नेक्स्ट् यत् मण्डलम् उत्तमं तर्हि यन् मण्डलम् एण्ड् जाग्रत् नागरिकः किं भविष्यति उत्तमं जाग्रत् जाग्रन् नागरिकः अस्तु जाग्रत् नागरिकः इस् एन् अवेकन्ड् सिटिजन् कान्शियस् सिटिजन् सो वी नीड् टु हाव् देशे सर्वत्रापि कथं वयं जाग्रन् नागरिकाः जाग्रत् नागरिकान् वयं प्रेरयामः इति प्रश्नः अस्ति। हाउ डू वी इंस्पायर हाउ डू वी गेट सिटिजन्स टू बिकम मोर कॉन्शियस इति एकः महान् प्रश्नः अस्ति। कॉन्शियस अबाउट एव्रीथिंग अस्माकं कथं वयं विद्युतः उपयोगं कुर्मः हाउ डू वी यूज इलेक्ट्रिसिटी हाउ डू वी यूज अवर वाटर हाउ क्लीन डू वी कीप आवर प्लेसेस सर्वविषये अस्माकं जागरूकता आवश्यकी अस्ति। अस्तु वी नीड टू बी कॉन्शियस ऑफ ऑल दीस् थिंग्स। तर्हि संस्कृतं न केवलं भाषा अस्ति किन्तु संस्कृत प्रयोगेन स्वस्यापि संस्कृतीकरणम् आवश्यकम् अस्ति। सो अलोंग विथ the Sanskritization of our language, the refinement of our speech, it also becomes very important to become more and more conscious individuals. Sachetanaha bhavamaha. Astu, agre gacchama. तत्र अत्र अस्ति अनुस्वारसन्धिः। अनुस्वारसन्धिः किं वदति सूत्रमस्ति मोनुस्वारः। एतदस्य अष्टमाध्याये तृतीयपादः 23तम सूत्रम्। तर्हि तत्र अस्ति मान्तस्य पदस्य अनुस्वारः स्यात् धलि। स्यात् हलिः हल् यदा भवति तदा तस्य अनुस्वारः भवति इति। व्यञ्जने परे पदान्ते स्थितस्य मकारस्य अनुस्वारः भवति। अनुस्वारः वयं जानीमः। तर्हि मकार प्लस व्यञ्जनानि और एनी काइंड ऑफ कॉन्सोनेंट्स तत्र अनुस्वारः भवति। डज दैट रिंग अ बेल? Satyam. So this is something that we've been doing all along, but we never associated it with the hardware, the sutra. Kimartham does a makara in the middle of a sentence followed by a consonant become an anuswara? And this is your rule here. So udaharane kim astah atra ramam plus vande kim bhavishyati? Ramam vande. Uttamam. Tari atra makara ma halanta makarasya tatra anuswara bhavati. Next kim asti? Guhayam tapati. गुहायां तपति। उत्तमम्। अग्रे गच्छामः। अनुस्वारसन्धे द्वितीयभागः अपि अत्र अस्ति। सो सूत्रं नश्चापदान्तस्य झलि एण्ड् एतदस्ति अष्टमाध्याये तृतीयपादे 24तम सूत्रे। तत्र नस्य मस्य चापदान्तस्य झल्यनुस्वारः स्यात्। न्यमगणनान् वर्जयित्वा वर्गीयव्यञ्जनेषु ष-ष-स-हेषु च झलिपरेषु अपदान्ते स्थितस्य नकारस्य मकारस्य च अनुस्वारो भवति। ओके, तर्हि किं वदति? दैट बेसिकली द न एंड द मकार विल बिकम एन अनुस्वार इफ इट इज अ वर्गीय व्यंजनम और ष-ष-सः। किमस्ति अत्र? आक्रम प्लस स्यते बिकम्स आ क्रन् स्यते. Akram is to attack and syate is for the bhavishya. So akran syate becomes akran syate, will attack iti arthaha. Atra abhyasam kurma militva. Tari etatu bahu sahajam asti. Kim bhavati atra? I've tried to build a story also atra. So satyam vada kim bhavati? Satyam vada. Next, dharmam chara. Etad Taittiriya Upanishadah Shikshawalyam Vartate. So this was the kind of advice that was given to the Snatakas or those who were graduating, Satyam Vada, Dharmam Chara, and we'll see if we can look at it in greater detail. Dukkham Tyaja. Dukkham Tyaja. Next, Evam Kritva. Kim bhavishati? Evam Kritva. आपणं गत्वा, आपणं गत्वा, पुस्तकं पश्य, पुस्तकं पश्य. When we are doing Vedic chanting, however, you have to pay attention that the Anuswara will sound like the last letter of the next letter. Tari dukkham tyaja will become dukkhan tyaja. Evam kritva, evam kritva. So, dharmanchara. Tathaiva satyam vada. Tatra anya niyamah agachati. Astu, agre pashyama. Idanim piyushena saha etasya अभ्यासं कुर्वत् एकं संभाषणं कुर्मः.
हरिः ओम आर्ये.
हरिः ओम पीयूष.
भवत्यद्य वर्गे किम् अपाठयत्?
इदानीं तु व्यञ्जनसन्धेः पाठः सञ्जातः. पश्याव एतद्विषये तव कियत् धारणा अस्तीति.
पृच्छत्वार्ये. प्रयत्नं करिष्यामि.
अस्तु, पाठितविषयात् एव प्रक्ष्यामि. भवन्तः अपि प्रयत्नं कुर्वन्तु. अस्तु, धनुष्टङ्कारः इति पदद्वयोः सन्धिकरणेन किं रूपं भवति? तस्य सन्धेः च किं नाम? नाम किम्?
आर्ये एतत्तु ष्टुत्वसन्धिना ष्टुः इति सूत्रेण धनुष्टङ्कारः इति भविष्यति.
उत्तमम्. अन्यदेकम् इत्यस्य किं शब्दद्वयं वर्तते? कश्च सन्धिः इति कृपया वद.
सरलमस्ति आर्ये. एतत्तु जस्त्वसन्धिः अस्ति. झलां जषन्ते सूत्रेण अन्यत् एकम् इति पदयोः योगेन अन्यदेकम् इति रूपं भवति.
साधु. अन्तिमः एकः प्रश्नः. अस्माभिः वर्गान्ते कथ्यमानः श्लोकाः प्रायः अनुष्टुप् छन्दसि भवन्ति. एतयोः पदयोः सन्धिं करोतु.
आम् आर्ये. एतत्तु चर्त्वसन्धेः अनुसारं खरि च इति सूत्रेण अनुष्टुप् छन्दः इति भवति.
अत्युत्तमः छात्रः त्वं. तव ज्ञानेन मे महान् सन्तोषः जातः. शुभं भवतु.
धन्यवादः आर्ये. शुभं भवतु भवत्याः अपि. शुभदिनञ्च.
नमस्ते.
प्रणामः.
Pranama. Moving on to our general definition of dharma that you are becoming more and more familiar with. Tari militva gayama idanim. Astu? Atra asti. Kshama satyam damah shaucham danamindriya sanyamaha ahimsa guru shushrusha tirthanusaranam daya आर्जवं लोभशून्यत्वं देवब्राह्मणपूजनम् अनभ्यसूया च तथा धर्मः सामान्य उच्यते इति. अस्तु, विष्णुपुराणे एतद् वाचस्पत्ये मिलति. So, the next quality that we are going to be looking at is Indriya Sanyamaha. And Indriya Sanyamaha eka compound word asti, and let's look at what kind of compound word. कीदृश समासेन एतत् पदं सृष्टम् अस्ति इति वयं पश्यामः. इन्द्रियाणां संयमः इति इन्द्रिय संयमः. Indriyanam, the senses, sanyamaha, we look at what sanyamaha means, but basically it means a control. Iti indriya sanyamaha. This is known as indriya sanyamaha. This is the Shashti Tat Purusha Samasaha. We will be looking at samasas down the line in this course, but samasa is nothing but this compound word. Astu. And this literally means the controlling of all our senses. And I would like to again mention that these values that we are finding under the context of dharma are taken from Piyush's PhD work. So, he has got a fantastic collection of all these values, and also to understand what leads to what. If you are looking to understand more about the concept of values and how they were implemented, what were the practices that encouraged them, then kripaya Piyushena saha avashyam सम्भाषणं करोतु यदा अवसरः मिलति. डिस्कशन् फोरम् मध्ये अपि तस्य सम्पर्कं कर्तुं शक्नुवन्ति एतत् सन्दर्भे. अस्तु, अग्रे पश्यामः. इन्द्रियम् इत्युक्ते किं? सो व्हाट् इस् एन् इन्द्रियम्? अत्र इन्द्रेण ईश्वरेण सृष्टम् इति इन्द्रियम्. सो व्हाट् इस् इन्द्रियम्? इन्द्रेण ईश्वरेण सृष्टम् इति इन्द्रियम्. सो It's very interesting because eta definition is there in the Shadda Kalpadhruma, but Indrena Ishwarena. Indra word is very interesting. Sri Aurobindo says that it represents the illumined mind in the Vedas. So it is this fragmentation of the universe which utilizes the different faculties of consciousness. To hear is a faculty of consciousness, to smell is a faculty, to see is a faculty of consciousness, to taste, to touch, all of these are faculties of consciousness that have got embodied in the human being, and that allow us to grasp the outer world. Uttama discussions in the Upanishads, kadachit pashyantu athava pathantu avashyam. Agre, kani indriyani santi, which are they? There are chaturdasha indriyani. So you've got the jnanendriyani, there are 5 of them, the senses of knowledge, which are the yatha karnaha, so the karnaha, twak, skin, chakshu, eyes, jihva, the tongue, nasika, that's the nose. So they are the instruments of knowledge, and then you've got the karnendriyani pancha. So they are the instruments of action. What are they? Yatha vak, speech, panihi is the hand, padaha, the feet, payu is that which excretes, and upasthaha are the reproductory fluids. And then you've got antarindriyani chatwari. What are the 4 internal instruments? So you've got internal senses, they are yatha manaha, buddhi, ahankara, chittam, which is also known as the antahkarana chatushtayam, known as the 4 internal instruments. And atra tu manastavat indriyanam niyamakam. So the mind is the controller, is the control room of all the senses. Astu, there are fabulous discussions that can take place based on this way of understanding the connections of all the senses, their sense organs, etc. The definition of Sanyama in the Yoga Sutrani, because Indriya we've just seen, and what is Sanyama? Atra asti Indriyanam Sanyamaha iti Indriya Sanyamaha iti, we have seen the definition. Idanim. Yoga Sutre, Patanjali, Maharshi Patanjali. So just one small note on that, there are many people who pronounce his name as Patanjali, Patanjali. There are a whole lot of permutations and combinations because it's hard to know the exact length of the vowel in his name. If you're looking at it in English, Patanjali, Patanjali, it's very hard to know where you will make it a long vowel and a short vowel. But the correct name is Patanjali. And sometimes you say Patanjala Yoga Sutram, which means the Yoga Sutram of Patanjali makes it Patanjala. Astu. Desha bandhas chittasya dharana. So what is dharana according to Yoga Sutram? It is Desha bandhas chittasya dharana, which is fixing the consciousness on one point or region is concentration or dharana. Next, tatra pratyayaikatanata dhyanam. So tatra pratyayaikatanata dhyanam. What is that saying? A steady continuous flow of attention directed towards the same point or region is meditation. Next, kim bhavati? Tadevartha matra nirbhasam swarupa shunyamiva samadhihi. What is that saying? When the object of meditation engulfs the meditator, appearing as the subject, self-awareness is lost. This is samadhi. And finally, trayam ekatra sanyamaha. When the 3 of them are in one place, then you have sanyamaha. And these 3 together, dharana, dhyana and samadhi, constitute the integration or sanyamaha. The Yoga Sutra also gives us a general definition of pratyahara that actually precedes the dharana, dhyana and samadhi. So just to give you a layout of the Ashtanga Yoga as given by Patanjali Maharshi, where he is saying that how do you reach samadhi? There are 8 steps. Kim kim asti? Yama, 5 yamas. Which are the 5 yamas? There is Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. Okay, so truth, Ahimsa, non-violence, Brahmacharya, control, so celibacy, Asteya, non-stealing, and Aparigraha, non-hoarding. Anantaram, you've got the niyamas, you've got 5 of the niyamas, which are Shaucha, Santosha, so there is cleanliness, there is contentment, and then there is Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara, Pranidhana, so Tapaha, austerities, Swadhyaya, self-study and the study of text, Ishvara, Pranidhana, the devotion to God, Anantaram Agachati, Asana. So you do an asana after having gone through these early steps. Anantaram, and the asana is with the bodily movements, etc. पतञ्जलि महर्षि तत्र अधिकमपि न वदन्ति, केवलं स्थिरं सुखम् आसनम् इत्येव तत्र पोय्स् एण्ड् सुखं पोस्चर् इस् आसनम्। अनन्तरं तत्र भवति pranayama, so the breath, we're getting more and more refined. So from external, you're seeing how it's going internally. Anantaram, once the breath is more in control, then we've got pratyahara, the withdrawal of the senses from the sense objects. And that is what pratyahara is all about. So until here, the five first steps are known as the Bahiranga Yoga, because they have to do with the outer world. There is this connection with the outer world. And then you have the Antaranga Yoga, which is what we've just seen, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi tatra bhavati. Astu, tari idanim pratyahara kim asti, katham cha karaniyam, tari atra vadanti, tari indriya sanyama ityukte kim, indriya sanyama ityukte, indriyanam pratyaharaha athava or uta, indriyanam vashyata, the control of the senses. Indriyanam pratyaharaha swa vishaya samprayoge chitta swarupanukara ivendriyanam pratyahara. So what is it? In the absence of the union with their own objects, the function of the senses is to follow, as it were, the nature of the mind is pratyahara. So if the senses are not drawn outwards, then the senses will tend to follow what the mind is focusing on, and that's when you turn the gaze inwards and go towards dharana, dhyana and samadhi. Anyadapi atra sutram asti, indriyanam vashyata tataha parama vashyatendriyanam. Kim asti tatra? So it says indriyanam vashyata tataha, so the control of the senses, tataha, the highest, parama vashyatendriyanam, that's the highest control of the senses, thence the highest subjugation of the senses. Subjugation is one possible translation, but vashyata is really getting them under your control and not suppressing them. Iti atra arthabheda asti. Astu, let's move on. So what is Swami Shivananda of the Divine Life Society, one of the leading spiritual masters in the past century, what does he have to say of Sanyamaha? So he says the three, Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi together constitute Sanyamaha. Some of the notes on that text. So he says Sanyamaha means perfect control of the mind. Here it is a technical name for three inseparable processes of Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi taken collectively. By the practice of Sanyamaha, the yogi gets knowledge and powers. The three processes are practiced on any one object successively at the same time. The 5 angas of yoga are intended to purify the body, prana and senses. These 3 practices purify the mind. They constitute the very basis of yoga. With the help of these 3, the yogi dives deep within and brings out the pearl of knowledge of anything. Sanyamaha is the name given to the combined practice of Dharana, Dhyana and Samadhi at one and the same time. By Sanyamaha on external objects, he gets various siddhis and hidden knowledge of the universe, of tanmatras, etc. By concentration on indriyas, ahankara and mind, etc., he gets various powers and experiences. These things are explained in the subsequent sutras. Patanjali's Yoga Sutras are a tremendous manual of psychology which help us have very detailed understanding of the workings of the human mind. Ataha yada samaya bhavati idanim sandhi ityadayah api vayam kurma kripaya Yoga Sutrasya avashyam adhyanam kurvantu iti eka vinamra prarthana asti. Some references. Tari aham asham karomi yat you've been able to keep up and abhyasam api kritavantaha agre varge vayam adhikam api drakshyama vyanjana sandhi vishaye. Tavat paryantam abhyasam kurvantu uchchahi vadantu iti mama prarthana asti. Namaste.